audience. Deputy Tully, please.
I'd just like to welcome Minister O'Gorman and Minister Rabbitte here today. And I welcome too with you the formation of this committee. I mean, it's something that was called for a long time and didn't happen until now, so it's great that it has happened. And as you said, Minister O'Gorman, disability is not just a health issue, it's a much broader issue, and I agree totally with that. We do have to watch that we don't overlap with the other committee, that we work with them as we said we would earlier. But it's not just the job of this committee and the other committee for children and disability and integration and equality to deal with disability. It's every government department. So I'm asking both of you ministers, you're a cabinet, you have to ensure on the behalf of every person with a disability that every government department ensures that they meet the needs of those who are disabled in our community. Deputy Moran has mentioned transport. I know in my area there, if somebody needs a wheelchair accessible taxi in a rural area, they're charged twice what somebody who doesn't need one. I suppose there isn't public transport available in many of the rural areas. I just want to bring up congregated settings, and I just want to know whose responsibility is the ultimate closing of congregated settings. It was something that came under the Department of Health. Is it still under the Department of Health, or is it under your committee, Minister Gorman? Because, I mean, there was a deadline set of 2018 for closing congregated settings. That wasn't met. It's now been moved out to ultimately happening at some stage, and it's very vague, and I think that's something that needs to work on. That also leads on to independent supported living for people, not just in congregated settings, but we've got many adults aged 20 to 60 living at home with their parents. And that's not fair, that's not respecting their dignity and their independence. They need supported independent living, and it's not available out there. It's not achievable. And on the other hand, you've got older parents, many in their 70s or 80s, caring for their loved one, and their biggest concern is what's going to happen to them after they pass. So that's not a situation that should be left until they do. It's something that should be dealt with now, and to give people the respect and the dignity that they deserve as well. Many people will need a personal assistance service in order to live independently, especially people with physical disability. And again, that's extremely difficult to access and is not being provided. And again, I just want to know what sort of procedures are in place to deal with that. Just make another point. Anybody applying for disability allowance or carers allowance, it seems to be some of the most difficult payments to get in the Department of Social Protection. The carers allowance, it takes months for some reason, and it's very difficult, and often you have to appeal it a number of times before being granted it. And the same for disability allowance. I also feel disappointed that disability allowance wasn't increased in the budget, because the cost of living with a disability is much higher. And we take it that the COVID payment is €350 a week, whereas disability allowance is only €203. And then they have all extra costs of perhaps medication or other services that they need as well on top of that, and that's something that should be dealt with as well. I mean, the issues are huge, there's an awful lot of them, but I'd like to get you to answer the questions. I mean, we will be working through the different issues as we go along. I also would hope that this committee as well will be hopefully holding other ministers from other departments to account as well about making sure that they are playing their role in making us a disability-friendly nation. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Ministers, do you want to?
Thanks very much, Deputy. Well, I think, as you say, putting the needs and giving voice to persons with a disability has to be absolutely core, as you were saying, to what we achieve in this committee. And indeed, when myself and Minister Rabbitte were initially appointed in, and we were meeting with disabled persons organisations in kind of late July and August, I think it was probably Disability Federation of Ireland who really flagged with us that they wanted to see this committee formed, because they were aware that there was an existing commitment to have a specific disability committee formed that hadn't been acted upon. So I think we wrote jointly to the Count Corla before the Dáil resumed, just to now obviously it was in train anyway, but I think it was important that we saw it is recognised out there by the disabled persons organisations that this committee will have a really important function, both in terms of holding to account, but also ensuring that government is working together. I think you make that point, that it's the job of advancing the rights and the needs of persons with disability doesn't just fall to myself and Minister Rabbitte, it falls on every government department. And I suppose one of my jobs at Cabinet is to remind everyone of that as much as possible. But I think even in the context of the Junior Minister Madigan in the Department of Education, there is a much more holistic approach to it being taken by this government. I think the creation of this department is an important step in that for the first time. And I know in the previous Oireachtas, Minister McGrath did a really good job as regards Junior Minister, but I think there was an understanding that actually rather than a Junior Minister across a number of departments, maybe the best way to work was to bring responsibility for policy and service provision together in the one department, and that's what we're seeking to achieve. And as I say, you listed a few specific points, for example, congregated, the ending of congregated living. That will be a role of this department. It is still with health at the moment because service provision hasn't moved over yet, but it will be moving over in the next number of months. The entire health responsibility and will rest with this department. And I think the issue you raised as regards the difficulty of accessing carers allowance is probably one of those areas where I need to go and raise that with my colleague, the Minister for Social Protection. And maybe if you want to come back to me subsequently with some specific examples on that, I can speak to Minister Humphreys about that particular area. But I think, you know, you've raised a number of points, and they all tie back to that idea of giving persons with disability the greatest independence possible. So whether it's for people who have a disability in rural Ireland for whom public transport isn't an option, whether it's the personal assistance service, which I know we engage with a number of organisations. Independent, and they really just pushed we met with a number of people whose lives had been transformed by the provision of the personal assistance service. So I think we're conscious of that. It's a big change in responsibility, and it's taken a little while to move it from health to our new department, where we believe we take the time and get it right. There'll be a new relationship between my department and the HSC, so there'll have to be an accountability relationship there that will involve some changes to the Health Act, so some changes to primary legislation, and it's a very significant budget, moving a budget of 2 million, as Minister Rabbitte outlined. So it's taken a little bit of time, but it's right. I think it's worth taking that time to get it right, get the structures in place, and it's our intention to make it work.
Just in relation to the congregated settings, I answered you a question, I think recently. I think you had a topical or something like that recently in the Dáil. But anyways, we are committed as a government. It is in the programme for government. There is in approximately 2,000 people at the moment who have to move from to be decongregated. There is provision within the budget as well to support it. This year alone, 66 people, even though we had COVID, 66 people still moved out of congregated settings. So it is a priority. As Minister O'Gorman said, we met with the independent living movement who spoke about the value of the PA assistance. And we've taken that on board, and it has been provisioned for as well within the budget as part of our service level agreement.